everyone. Raghu, and I'm back with Mindrolling. And now you're kind of an old friend now, Bunny. Bunny Micheal is with me. Hi, Bunny.
Hi, hi, hi.
Nice to have you.
So
And
happy to be here.
yeah, we were just talking about this wonderful retreat, and it's the time we've spent the most time together. Bunny came to the fall retreat in Ojai, where we are now headquartered, Love Serve Remember Foundation, and Mindrolling for that matter. And we had a great time at this camp that we're using to retreat. Wasn't it nice to go to camp?
It was
Right?
so nice. It was like bringing back a lot of memories,
Yeah,
you
me
know?
too. Me
Yeah. And it
too.
was cool to make new friends. And yeah, it was just so nice to be in that setting, in that community, and feeling like right at home. And it was awesome.
All right, we got to tell people a little bit about you. Who are you? Who are
Who
you? And
am
now we're going to
I?
get into this whole thing about roles and identities too.
Right.
But just some connectivity, please.
Okay. Well, maybe I should put it in the context of how we met each other.
Yeah. Mm.
So we met each other through collaborating on bringing more awareness to the Becoming Nobody film. And that was because of my use of my social media platform, which is I'm an artist and a musician. I've been, performing and doing music for a lot of years. But a few years ago, um, I started creating memes on my Instagram where I'm talking to my higher self. And it was sort of out of this response to, at the time, I don't know if you were aware, but at the time back in 2016 there was a lot of these memes going around that was like the evil Kermit memes. I don't know if you're aware, but it was like talking to your lower self
Yeah, yeah,
basically.
yeah, yeah. Most of
And
everything that's out there, Bunny, is doing
yeah,
that, is it not, in
yeah,
media?
yeah. So I wanted to flip the script because I was, obviously on a healing path and had been for years. And I really was looking to integrate my art more with the message and to be a little bit more literal with the message of what I was, trying to spread. So I was like, well, I can literally put the message in the image. And that's why I think, as far as internet culture, memes can be so powerful because it is an image with words. Um, so anyway, I
Yeah.
just started making them and talking to myself and posting them every day without really any expectation. And then I just, garnered a really large following and it sort of expanded to be, you know, 2 books, and I'm making a web series. And so and I do talks. And so this whole, you know, honing in on connecting to our higher selves and really being in tune with the voice or the awareness of love and speaking through the awareness of love and acknowledging that we are both we're not quite there yet, and that's okay, because I think that's an important part of what I do is I say, the thought and then the higher self version of the thought, and both being okay,
Mm,
and
very
I think that's
important.
why it's relatable
Yeah,
to a lot of people.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. We met last fall in New York, actually, and yeah, we really hit it off. I was really happy to have met you. And one of
Mhm.
the things everybody out there, and you'll get all of Bunny's handles on all social media. All of that will be on the show notes page of this podcast. But everybody knows people that are out there with pretty big followings, on
Mm.
social media, particularly on Instagram. Um, Now, but I got to say, what Bunny is doing uh, is so very unique. And what really tickles me is the way that what she's doing is like part of who we are, meaning the legacy from Neem Karoli Baba through Ram Dass Krishnas, all of us, into the West. And you just said it with the two the higher self and lower self, and they're talking to it, and you just said, and it's okay. Both of it's okay, right?
Mhm.
That
Yeah,
is so important.
thank you. Yeah, I really kind of just it's really um sort of showing the relationship is sort of what I really like and enjoy, and it's playful, and it can be funny and it can be serious, and and just seeing the relationship we have with ourselves, it's really like, which is probably the most important relationship. um
Yeah.
and I've always sort of learned through relationship, and I sort of, it it's funny that I'm actually getting more into astrology. I wasn't really into astrology before, but I have a really good teacher, and learning about, like, I'm a Libra, and learning about, showing through relationship and stuff. And I was like, wow, it is the relationship between me and my higher self is how I express myself. So yeah, it's a really loving relationship, I think.
Thanks. Mine isn't always so loving, unfortunately.
I think it is. Maybe it's
uh,
not conscious all the time, but
uh, um, I just, the good thing is I don't take myself that serious on any level at all. So
hmm
that helps.
hmm
Tell me about where did you even come to the moment at whatever age that there
hmm
even was such a thing as a higher self or a true self or a life beyond the dictates of our parents and society and culture,
hmm
etc. Where was that moment, transformational moment for you?
I think, it probably started with feeling, being somewhat of an outcast growing up, in my family, and having, issues around being accepted by my family, um, and sort of identifying with sort of feeling like an outsider in a lot of ways. I really honed in on needing to have a creative outlet as a way of healing or therapy, or just really understanding myself, something that can really help me feel like my differences were important. And as I was growing as an artist and learning how to express myself, um, I started to feel a little bit like empty when I got caught up in trying to be cool and successful. And I sort of lost myself for a little bit there. And I was like really like stressed about if I was gonna make it, and was having a really hard time, and my relationships were hard. And I kind of just had this like, when you're going through a hard time and you realize, oh hey, I need to get healthy. And so I just began like anybody else, picking up books, reading Ram Dass, doing yoga, which extended into, plant medicines and, spiritual groups. And then just a few years ago, like I was saying, when I had the idea about the higher self, was I was sitting in meditation, and I was having a hard time during that time. And I I saw myself, like I had a vision of seeing myself um embrace myself. It was like putting my arms around myself, and I was like, it's okay, you're okay, like you're doing great. And it was the most like, it felt so good. It was just so nurturing and such a relief to to literally visually see my compassion for myself. So I'm a very visual person, so I think I just really needed to see it. And through that, I started making photography that had two of me, but it wasn't until I literally put the message in the image that I really started to explore, okay, what is this higher self thing? And I sort of, through the Instagram, I kind of set myself up to always be thinking about this, because I always have to write new ones, and I've written hundreds of them, So I sort of just like am basically making my spiritual journey public in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And your self-honesty is fabulous. It really is,
Thank
Bunny.
you.
It really
Thank
is.
you.
But so there's this little thing. There was some article about you. Uh, I love this person says, needless to say, Instagram isn't always great for a person's mental health.
Yeah.
Okay. Scrolling through photos of people performing their best lives can stir up feelings of FOMO, envy, anxiety, and obsession. And you're talking about you use the digital platform to encourage people to overcome fearful thinking and judgment online and IRL. What's IRL?
In real life.
In real life, right? And replace those feelings with inner wisdom and love. Uh, yeah. So what? But just in general, of course,
Mhm.
you know it's a double-edged sword, as they say, social
Mhm.
media.
Yeah.
And we talk about this a lot on different podcasts that I've done about just this is a huge beast we're dealing with. I see, from little kids now that have iPhones that they're 5 years old. It's what are your thoughts around the efficacy and the potential real downfall?
Well, I think just like any other technological advance, it's really just about coming into acceptance of the where we're moving. We can't stop this, new age of having access to everything all at one time, and with the internet and you, and I always say to myself like, oh, when I look at my nephews and I'm like, I see how like how parents are so aware now in a way that like maybe my parents weren't, because they didn't have the information of the internet, they didn't have the education. And I look and I say, oh wow, they have it so great, right? Because now we know it's not okay to like do that to your kids and stuff like that. And but then I think to myself, but they are faced with so many more challenges than I was faced with. But, I also just think it's just sort of like it's all just your perspective really, because um there's with the technology, it can go either way, and it's really just how you use it, you know, just like anything else.
Yeah.
And I think that I try to spread a little bit more um an awareness of that everybody has a responsibility in this world. I think a lot of people think online you're able to get away with things that you weren't necessarily able to do, that you wouldn't do in IRL. But I really try to ask people, and not even people that are out on social media to like put their messages out there, just really like think to yourself, okay, how do I think this post or this image is going to make somebody feel? And I think that I feel very optimistic that we're like all of this stuff is like coming in the surface, and all of the things that we've sort of like been in the shadows, and the internet is just like showing us our stuff. And I think it's an essential, obvious part of us in the awakening of our consciousness to see all of this stuff that has always really been there, but has been latent in our consciousness. And now it's on full display. And it can be really, really scary, and it can be dangerous. And you have to walk, very carefully with it, and be very, treat it like with a lot of sincerity and a lot of care. But I do think that it's just part of our growth in a lot of ways.
Mm, yeah. I mean, I just in relation to we're doing this podcast not long after Ram Dass passed, and God, it's something we used to talk about a lot, all the time, and uh,
Mm,
the just the avalanche of affection towards him after his passing was so extraordinary that I mean, I knew he was beloved, and but the extent of it was staggering. I wasn't really ready for it at all, and
yeah. Well,
and
you've been so in it. right?
I've been in it. Yeah.
You've been in it the whole time. You've never
Yeah.
really not been in it. So you've never really had that vision of looking from the other way, because you've been there for so long.
Yeah. But I don't know if you were talking when you were talking about when you started to realize. Remember, I asked you when did you start to realize there even was a higher self and all that, and you started
Uh,
talking about you. When was that? You didn't mention that. How old were you? A teenager of some sort?
when I started with the
Just when
higher
you
self.
really understood there was a way out of this misery.
Ooh, that was probably no, not when I was a teen. It wasn't until probably like 7 years ago or so. I'm
Oh, really?
37, so it was
Uh-huh.
around I think it was around like my Saturn return and my,
Oh, yeah.
turning get into my 30s, and um, I really, I mean, I was always sort of like I felt a connection to God, but it became very visceral, and I was able felt the presence, the awareness of, this isn't everything. Probably like as more as I'm getting into my 30s.
Uh-huh. Well, I was so horribly unhappy in my teenage years
Uh,
that I was okay. As soon as acid came around and that I could get it, I was like, okay, absolutely. And that was I was by then 20 or something like that.
uh,
That first thing to show me, okay, there is another reality. I am
right,
not bound to be stuck in this really miserable kind of.
right. I did do acid as a teenager, yes, many times.
Oh,
I kind of
okay.
forgot.
Tell the
I
truth.
did, yeah. I mean, I was doing a lot. I was doing acid and mushrooms from the time I was 15.
Okay, so something
Um,
happened, right? That
so yeah, I mean, I distinctly remember the moment when I knew I was an artist was when I was on LSD and I was sitting in my friend's house and I was drawing a picture of the Virgin Mary with, and I had a pink pen, and I saw like my mother and my mother's mother, and and I was like, oh, this is what like being an artist is. It's like showing meaning in something like symbolic. So yeah, there was those glimpses, I guess. I couldn't really put it into like a full I didn't really have a language for it, I guess,
yeah,
until much later.
yeah, 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 exactly. And neither did I, and neither did Ram Dass for that matter. It wasn't until Huxley showed him
Mm-hmm.
the Tibetan Book of the Dead that he got the idea, at that time. So, but some of the things, if not all of the things that you are representing on Instagram, on social media, uh, around your own feelings. You just described earlier how just embracing yourself, it is okay. You can have those dark thoughts. You can have those emotions. You can realize that your motivations are so highly suspect, but it's okay, and embracing yourself. So you're using yourself, as you said, as an example for
Mm-hmm.
this now, which I find extraordinarily attractive because not because of anything, but I certainly relate it to Ram Dass, particularly because of that amount of self honesty he had as soon as he started going out and giving talks after he came back from India the first time. And it was those talks that, I listened to that talk just like someone's watching, picking up on Instagram and seeing some of the memes, and now this show, which we'll talk about in a minute, the web series, and are going, wow, yeah, okay, yeah, it's okay. Okay, somebody
Mm-hmm.
else, I'm having that same experience, and it's okay. And in that same way, I did the same thing with Ram Dass. It was, in fact, when he left, I put a thing out on Instagram, just my feelings, like the day, 2 days later, whatever it was. And of course, there was all the family that he introduced us to. Of course, there was the satsang, the community of people of one mind. Of course, it was all that incredible love, compassion, and heart wisdom. We loved it all. But I said the greatest thing was he said it was okay to be a screw up. Okay. It's okay. Just what
Mhm.
you're espousing right now.
Mhm.
And that to me is the absolute first step anyone needs to take, is to reorient that judge and move it out with
Mhm.
the embracer. It's okay. Right.
Mhm.
And so you talk about just your life is
Mhm.
informing you, and I'm sure from your childhood on
Mhm.
is informing um, how you can embrace. First of all, is recognizing many of the things that you're talking about, and then how to embrace them. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Mhm.
Some of the key things that you're sharing about your own self.
Yeah, I mean, I think that probably it started when, I came out as queer when I was 15, or I was actually, my mom caught me kissing my girlfriend.
Oh,
And the process of, just being made to feel so ashamed of who I
mm,
was. And I became suicidal, and I was in a mental hospital as a teenager. And I ran away from home, and it was just, all of this stuff. And then, and it's, I think what it was, what really sparked it was the things that had given me security, or sense of safety were now gone, right? With this rejection. And how do I what where do I find my own sense of who I am? So it was like, I think it's really also common. It's hard to like be grow up queer, but I think in a lot of ways it sort of like forces you to really know who you are in a way that maybe other people of the same age have yet to experience.
mm,
And it kind of gives you this maturity. So definitely that experience sort of was the beginning of a battle with depression that I've been through my whole life, since then. And just always, how like always being on the path of like trying to not let your thoughts create your own hell basically. And having, I guess, just being an artist and struggling, and having an abusive relationship, and coming out of it, and then like all of the lessons, just lesson over and over again. And I guess I think one of the greatest things I really feel like I've learned is that it's okay to because I was on a spiritual path for a while, and I always really judged myself for not like being there already or something. Like I think that there's people who are trying really hard to be their best selves are the same people who are really hard on themselves, because they don't really know where the line is between like trying to do better and just flat out like self criticism. And I think we like put a lot on ourselves. We feel responsible for the world. We feel responsible for every single thing we say to another person, or every thought that we have. We're constantly, trying to build our awareness, our awareness, our awareness, our awareness. And then you kind of realize at a certain point, I feel like I realized at a certain point was that actually the whole point of it is to be compassionate with yourself right now. It's right now that matters. And right now, and in every moment is like where we have to just stop and let go, of all of the pursuit of whatever it is. And I think that that's like, and Ram Dass talks about that all the time, like how you do both, how you're both human and not human.
yep.
And that's why I really love listening to his talks and stuff, because he talks about the struggles of the spiritual journey. And and we all recognize that in each other, because we all know that we all have the best intentions. We all want to change the world. We all want to feel happy. We want our friends and family to be happy. And we all really like growing. But I think that sometimes we can get so caught up in wanting that so much that we forget that none of it really matters except for right now. and enjoying the moment right now, just being here.
Yeah. You know, how would you so let me tell you what been on my docket in terms of I talk a lot about the way in which we are so wrapped up in our meanness on a day-to-day basis. And it's as my listeners I think know, I'm actually doing a book with Duncan Trussell on this subject called it's tentatively titled From the Movie of Me to the Movie of Us. So, and we've been
Mm,
using ourselves as case studies in the development of the movie of me. Of course, we are all a case study in that, and you are talking about that yourself, very much so.
mhm, mhm.
How would you talk to your constituents, if you want to call them that, um, about us, the central idea of realizing how we are creating this gigantic story, and we are going to live that out no matter what. And that story, of course, is being formed by all of the way that we grew up and our parents and our what kind of cultural atmosphere that we're in, all of it, past lives included, and and develop habitual patterns and neurotic tendencies. And w- how do we how are we going to tell your friends out there what can one do to get to the point where that perspective can be radically shifted?
Ooh,
It's a
I
big.
I think, well, I really feel like when it comes to that, it's hard. It's really I can only speak from my own experience and what it took me to get in a place where I could feel the presence of um the oneness, I guess. And I I think that, you know, we all of us have at some point had glimpses of um what it truly means, what love truly means. But I guess I personally think that creative expression is an amazing and such an honest tool for discovering that within yourself, or having a channel for that. That's how I found it personally. It I needed, like, I feel it. We're receiving all of this information here, but this we've stopped the flow. When we don't let it out, we're hindering the the love that's channeling through us. And so having a form of expression to to release it and then watch what form that takes is the witness of what's happening within you, and that's how you be the witness. um that's how I am the witness. And I also think that that's all that's really, like, going on, really, is that we're every it's the information is moving through the embodiment of who we are and our personality and our past, and how it comes out is like the birth of, like, that expression, and that's our teacher, you know. Um so I guess I just try to really encourage people to
Hmm.
find that outlet, and I think that a lot of people right now are, instead of going there, are just scrolling or watching TV or doing anything they can to not, to block it, because it's scary. And it takes and that's another reason why I am concerned about how there isn't a lot of, stillness now. um
Mm.
and quiet, and I find myself, like, just picking up my phone and opening it without even being conscious of why. So yeah, but yeah, I really feel like having that outlet of expression is the key.
Mm.
Um,
I would totally agree, and it's actually I'm glad you added that to the perspective that I've been ex, you know, sharing with people, in terms of realizing how caught and, devoted to our stories that we are from the moment that we wake up in the morning. This whole
yeah.
the concept movie of me came from actually Krishna Das, who, hey, you wake up in the morning and it's the movie of me. You're the star, you're the director and the writer. And it goes on 24/7, right?
Yeah.
So to me, there's not a footstep that can be made on the path to freedom from the kinds of fear, anxiety, and separation that we generally live in without realizing this. And once you realize the depth at which you're devoted to your story, which is made up of, a ton of different self-interest, then it's
Mhm.
very difficult to even take that first step. And once you do
Mhm.
realize that, then, Bunny, you've been
Mhm.
giving all. I mean, I love the next big step is embracing being human, just embracing
Mhm.
yourself, because mostly what we do is judge ourselves. And that
Mhm.
sometimes there's a big problem. You mentioned the witness, and that is the place from which changes can happen.
Mhm.
But you have to be careful to not be caught in the lower self judgmental witness. We can't.
Mhm.
That's not going to do a damn thing. And so
Mhm.
it's a matter of develop. That's why Ramdas is loving awareness meditation,
Mhm.
which he
Mhm.
stressed so much in the last years of his life, is so profoundly important, because it takes practices to do this. Now, I love
Mhm.
this idea that you've just proffered, around using expression to move behind the identification with your roles, and you
Mhm.
know who the story, and all
Mhm.
of it. And it is an actual practice, a spiritual practice, of course, um, is using a diary and writing
Mhm.
everything down. Fortunately, which is how you get some of the day-to-day life that we had with Neem Karoli Baba, and it's in a book uh, that's available called Love Everyone through ramdas.org shop, if you like. Um, that came from us doing that spiritual exercise. That thing is so
Mhm.
important now to so many people, of being able to identify with, yeah, we're all in the same boat. We're doing the same thing. We are running our asses to get away from any kind of pain, any kind of negative, whatever it is. We are not able to embrace it because we're running.
Mhm.
So, I love this quote from you, Bunny. Compassion gives you the vision to see through someone's behavior to the truth behind it. They have an unconscious fear they themselves are unworthy of love and care. Um, yeah, maybe you can expand upon that, and just kind of pull it apart a little bit in terms of seeing through someone's behavior and
Mhm.
the truth behind
Mhm. Yeah, I think that I feel like I could write that because I have been on that other side.
it.
I
Mm.
have been so deeply afraid that I am unworthy of love, and I have behaved out of that fear. And I know what that looks like. And so I think a very, compassion obviously is easier when you've had similar experiences that you could relate to. But I really, I really love how having compassion it 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 doesn't deny anything. And I think a lot of times people sometimes in the spiritual path get a little, oh, I don't want to be around negativity or toxic things or toxic people. And their way of staying in their bubble is sort of an avoidance, thing. But when you really hone in on the lens of compassion or the awareness of love, same, you could say the same thing. You can see beyond the form, beyond the personality, beyond um, the projection to the oneness, and you can see that, um, you can see how that other person is you as well, and um, and how really everybody is just in a different place um, in their journey to love. And some people are doing it consciously, and some people doing it unconsciously. But we are all the same together in that. And yeah, so I mean, it's really just like, being in the awareness of that is really just seeing the truth, which I think you could replace the truth with love.
Hmm.
Um,
Same. Yep. Same. Absolutely.
so it kind of gives you this like superhero, or these wings, because it's like and that's also the higher self, is the channeling of that wisdom, that intelligence of love, where you can walk around and you actually have like a compass within yourself that will show you the truth everywhere you go. And it's really just about trusting that. Because another thing that sometimes people will say or have a reaction to is that love, if I'm too loving, then I'm going to get taken advantage of,
Yeah.
and
Or
people are
it's
going to like
weak.
hurt
Yeah.
me, or it's weak. But big thing that I've learned is that love is what will say no, and love will have boundaries, and love sees what will be the most loving outcome, for everything involved. And because of your love for another person, you can walk away, because me being here will not help you have more love, and it won't help me. So I think it's just so great. Like, so it's it's just this, when you are able to tap into that, it's just
Mm.
the best feeling that you have that within, that wisdom inside of you, to see that. And
Mm. Compassion. It's a. It's so difficult to have that for ourselves. That's why I love you. Your
mm,
image of embracing yourself, and it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's and there's a compassion. Compassion also, it has an action to it. Not empathy. You feeling somebody else's pain, but it kind of stops there. With compassion, it's a reaching out, and part of that is realizing this person and I are no different. We have the
mhm,
same pain, we have the same suffering, just different categories of it, and we have the same need just to be loved and not be isolated. Of course, that is so needed. This in our society today, which is just so extraordinarily polarized, and how and all we can do is do that work on ourselves and radiate that out. And this is, of course,
mhm,
Ram Dass used to say this all the time in terms of social action and social justice, that we have to do it simultaneously. And that's another
mhm,
reason why, I love the work that you're doing, because you're doing it. So you're working on yourself, and you're working on helping in any which way you can to, I mean, I'm sure you're not necessarily thinking about, you know, cutting down on our polarization, but that's really in
oh,
effect
I
what's going on, right?
am.
You are?
I
Okay.
am. Oh, yeah. I am. And I think, I think that I have a lot of I've come across a lot of people who, have don't have a lot of patience for people's anger,
Mm,
or, there seems to be so much anger, online, and people are so angry, like, I don't wanna be, but I think it's just so important to bear witness to the process, and also realize what's happening now is just now. If I bear witness to this at this moment because that's what somebody needs, it doesn't mean that that is what will be the truth forever in the future, And I think that, like, again, going back to being present and going back to just, and having the space, just being in the space with somebody for that is so powerful. People just want to be heard.
mm,
And for so long, the structures of the way of our society have silenced many, many forms of expressing, forms of expression, and many, many voices. And it's like, um the stuff that needs to come out, and for the healing, and we can't just expect it to just heal itself, and just be all pretty, and it's all love and that it all, like it, and just expect people to just have their stuff together all of the time. And I think as people, I think compassion really shows itself you really when you give people space to be in their journey and to share their hearts with you.
mm. Yeah.
And I think that, like, we, in the spiritual community, or have a real, it's our part of our job as leaders to bear witness to that, to provide space for that. And when Ram Dass talked about in his videos about how he would sit with people when they were dying, and
Mm,
there'd be a bunch of people trying to cover up the dying,
yeah.
and even the priest would be like, "Oh, you're looking great, you're getting better,"
Yeah.
and he was like, "Why can't we just sit in this and just let it be?" It is that, it's not pretty, but it needs to be, like, they need us to bear witness to this. And I think that, remembering that as we navigate, all of these difficult conversations can be real helpful. Um,
Yeah. Just in general, it's hard for people to be just here in the moment, the be here now thing, right?
yeah.
Because
Yes.
you get edgy when nothing's going on.
Mhm.
That's why, this film Becoming Nobody, and I always say when I talk about it in Q&As and all that, when I met Ram Dass, he made that moment happen, or it happened through him. That's more of the reality,
Mm.
where I was
Mhm.
the only person in the world. There was no Richard, there was no Ram Dass, no nothing. And just that presence of that moment, here we are, and it's all okay. I heretofore never had that experience. And that's really what we need to offer each other. Somebody said
Mm.
the the most beneficial act that you can uh, perform in this life is giving somebody complete attention.
Mm.
Right?
Mhm.
How hard is that? Everyone, oh, that's easy. I can give. Yeah, bullshit. You sit there,
Mhm.
and I'm a huge offender. I mean, I will if especially if I'm mind is going work whatever, and somebody just wants to be with me for a moment. I'll be flicking my eyes, because they're not speaking rapidly enough, and they're not.
Mhm.
My mind is going faster than theirs, so there's a whole like we're in cars that are so far apart in terms of being on the highway, nowhere near each other. So it's a
Mhm.
very difficult thing, and and stillness is part of that. Bunny, you're
Mhm.
absolutely right. Us being able to just be here now means being able to be still, and that's
Mhm.
why meditation is very, very important. It allows us first, of course, to discover ourselves, and but it just in the concentration part of it, it just you'll be calmed down a little bit, you know.
Mhm.
And yeah, absolutely. Um, so wait, before we go anywhere, I want to hear about the web series, please. Where are you at? What is it going to be? Where are you at? How far is it from watching it?
Well, we are
And what is
currently
it?
oh, okay. It's a fictional web series called What Would Higher Self Do, where I wrote it, and it's about Bunny, me, played by me, but it's not exactly me, but about an artist named Bunny who's struggling to be successful in New York and make it, and works as a barista, and their higher self, which is also played by me, so it's two of me in the show, is comes around and helps Bunny with the problems that Bunny faces during, the struggles, like at work with with their boss, with their mom. And it's sort of just like bringing the memes to life, but also it's funny and doesn't take itself too seriously, but it's also, it kind of, I actually went to school for acting, and I really, I don't know why I did, it was like I just went for acting. I acted in high school, and then it was the only school that I grew up in Texas, and it was the only school that came and auditioned people from New York, and I was like, "Well, I wanna go to New York," so I just decided to go to that college, and came to New York and was trying to be an actor, but it really bummed me out because I needed to have, I couldn't wait to get a part in something. It was just like, I needed to create something myself, so I really just kind of, after a few years, just never really did it again. So it's kind of cool that now this is all coming together, and we're doing this show, and it's basically going to be a show that's made for Instagram TV. So each episode is like short, it's it's basically like a moment of one 24-hour period. So it's every moment of a 24-hour period. So it's from the time I wake up to getting ready, da, 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 and all these different things happen in one day. And you
Hmm.
see the progression, the mental progression, and the growth. And, it's pretty cool. I like it. So,
I hope so.
yeah.
You're spending,
I'm
I'm sure, a
excited
lot of
about it.
time. Yeah, no, it
Yeah,
sounds
I'm
great. And of course,
excited about it.
and you've done some, I've seen some of what you've done. I love it. Oh, just for everyone to get an idea, here's a couple of things that I found. So me says, I'm afraid of the unknown. And higher self says, no, you just think you already know the unknown and that it's something to be afraid of, right? And that goes right in line with belief in our thoughts and our stories. Um,
Mhm.
and how about love hurts and the higher self? Loss hurts. Love is a state of awareness where you are one with your wholeness. You got a nice little way with words,
Mm,
Bunny. Uh,
thank you.
you really do. And then here, I I need to get my shit together. You need to stop referring to what's important in your life as shit because you're unconsciously degrading yourself, which is why it's even harder for you to get those things done in the first place.
Yeah, it's literally like what I'm going through that day, so
Yeah, that's so great. Or what is a healthy relationship? Two people not projecting their own fears of inadequacy on the other person so they can actually get to know one another, which cultivates a safe space to get to know their higher selves. Oh, I haven't learned that yet, Bunny. I'm still.
you well, I mean, neither have I, it's a
You have.
process. No, I mean, I sometimes I will just write something, and then, like, a week later, I'll look back at something I wrote and be like, "Oh, yeah, like, that was true." I'm not really that conscious, when I'm writing them, I think it just kind of, I'm just addressing a feeling I'm having, so I'm not really that conscious of it in a way that is like, how do I use this? So so many of them, I'm not there yet,
Mm.
for sure. But
Yeah, no, of
that's okay
course.
too.
None of us are there yet. And that's like in
Yeah.
the, the fun thing in the movie Ram Dass says he meets an old professor friend of his, and and the guy, his friend, says to him, Dick, you're the same guy you always been, and then he later says, yeah, I got all those neurotic tendencies and everything. They're still going on.
Mhm.
Just through
Mhm.
time, they're not such a big deal. And that
Mhm.
is the case with all of us, right? One thing would be just not to forget this. And we kind of started this out with, how I had spent time when Bunny came out to the retreat we had in the fall here in Ojai, this beautiful camp. And I don't think I said anything about it, but uh, it is happening May 21 through 24th. And
Cool.
so just go to ramdas.org, and you go to where the events is and click somewhere there. And actually, it should be online for registration by the time this podcast gets up. So
Yeah. Register. I'm gonna be there.
yeah, Bunny's going to be there, and you know what, Bunny, I want to do what we're doing now there in one of the
Oh
sessions. How about that?
yeah.
Yeah, you and I can do this
Wow.
stuff.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be great. It's gonna be really great. But what
Awesome.
I think, when I asked you, how you liked it, maybe after or just I don't
Mm.
remember, but
Mhm.
you basically said just being with all the people was, such a
Yeah.
wonderful experience. And I get to tell everybody out there, they know it if they've been listening to Mind Rolling, or anybody that listens to this as they hear about it through you, getting together with people, and it's called community. It's called sangha in the Buddhist thing. It's called satsang in the Hindu thing. Is the most important thing that you can do to really understand how we are connected. We are not alone. And you see
Mhm.
how everybody goes into this one heart place, which is the purpose
Mhm.
of such a retreat. Ultimately, of course, there's all the intellectual stuff, and we play different Ram Dass tapes. So we have a wonderful Dharma teacher. In this case, it's Mirabai Starr, who contextualize it through her prism, and then we all share the prism, and you get to see how we are one heart. It's really profound. And
Mm.
I just say to everybody, uh, take advantage of this wherever and whenever you can.
Yeah.
And we look forward to seeing you there. And we look. When is the web series going to get? When are we going to be able to see anything?
I don't know yet, but I'll
Oh,
keep you in touch.
okay. You're going to let us know. We'll let everybody
Yeah, I'll let
know.
you know. I'll let you
Okay.
know.
All right.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, Bunny, thank you again for
Thank
being
you so
here.
much.
And thank you for being a friend. And I'm really happy we got to know each other.
Me too. I'm so happy. Thank you so much. I really am glad to have this conversation today. So,
Oh,
oh, so
wonderful.
nice. Thank
Wonderful, wonderful. So this is Mind Rolling on Be Here Now Network. Go to BeHereNowNetwork.com, and there's a bunch of different great podcasts. Yeah, Bunny, you need to do a podcast, okay?
I know.
Start.
Put it on the list. Put it on
Yeah, I know.
the
All right, we'll talk about this later.
list.
All right,
Okay.
everybody. We'll see you next time on Mind Rolling. Namaste.